seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Dumb bastard.
Well, we try again. Is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? What day is it? Jonathan, someone help me here, because this Monday Club's that late. It may as well be the year 2023, son.
Yes, well, I thought we were just paying homage to Celtic's performance against Raith Rovers and not turning up to the second half of the podcast, much like the team today.
Oh, mate, I know.
Me, what an absolute pickle we've got ourselves into with technology.
Do you know that way? I mean, I like the fact this is a caring bus and we all love each other. I got like 5 messages. Everything all right, mate? You okay? Like, I'm fine. The broadband's not. I know, and I know mental health's a big thing by this. I'm not making fun of that. But rest assured in future, if my broadband's not working, it doesn't mean I'm not okay. I'm fine. I'm just maybe...
You almost sound like Ross Geller of Friends there. I'm fine.
I'm fine. You know, do you know what? Sometimes better late than never, but that definitely wasn't intentional. We're all good on the Boyce'S. It's 3 minutes to 10. Where were we on time, Jonathan, in the rehearsals, mate? And makeup. We were in the dressing room on time, weren't we?
We were all set to go, and then the internet and everything else decided it wasn't working. So here we are an hour later, you know, just have to wait for the bus to come back around.
It's so frustrating, man. It's so frustrating. And I've got so many different theories as to why it's not working as well. And I bet you I'm wrong on every single one of them, right? And I get that. However, Jonathan, we're here. John Duncan's convinced it's Fife Wi-Fi. I think it might be because of USBs. CFCs. Who knows, Jonathan, what the issue is right now. However, for the start of the show, it's been a bit of a St. Valentine's Day massacre. Those who know. However, we will get to all that. The show might be a wee bit shorter this week, guys, because Jonathan does have his work tomorrow. I mean, I've got mine, but I'll be fine anyway. I'm a machine. But Jonathan needs his beauty sleep and all that. And, you know, think that quiff grows itself. He needs proper rest and recovery period for that. So, Jonathan, we'll get stuck into the week that was. Firstly, before we do so, a huge thanks to fanboyfootball.com. Always on time with their deliveries, unlike the Boyce'S. Huge thanks to everyone in the comments section. There's 42 watching live right now, which is 42 more than I would expect when we're as late as we are. We will do some fan cam live this week. We'll do some post-match pish. I don't apologise not for doing fan cam live yesterday, Jonathan. I worked out I've done an average of 5 shows a week with the Boyce'S so far, on top of a 40-hour-a-week work schedule. You know, and let's be honest, below the national minimum wage you're doing it for, put it that way. Below the national paper round. So I think if ever there was a Sunday I could take off, it was yesterday, and the pints tasted really good. So anyway, we'll get to the Raith Rovers game. I'm going to put it to you, Jonathan, because I think you might be more well-versed on how the match went yesterday. Shite game, job done. Is that maybe yet another sign of how good this season is going, though, that games that are maybe getting taken for granted by the Boyce'S is because you just expect Celtic to do well now in these sort of matches?
Yeah, partly I think, and it's obviously it's a good one to just be able to tick off as getting through in the cup, because that's really all that matters in those kind of games anyway. It doesn't matter if you win 4-0 or 1-0, you're still into the next round of the hat, and that's really what it's all about. I think if Celtic are going to have a poorer performance, then Raith Rovers at home is the game to put that in, because there's still got enough quality to see that game out. I thought first half was very slow. It's probably the most animated I've seen Ange in a long time on the touchline. He didn't seem happy at all with how things were progressing. The players just seem to be kind of reverting back to the sort of football we've kind of seen of just passing the ball around the back, not really wanting to take on a man and try and make something happen. So, you know, it was one of those games where I think they lacked a bit of motivation, the players. I think there was perhaps a bit of complacency there. You know, I think there was opportunities, obviously, for players, which Ange touched upon. You could kind of tell he was thinking these players that he's given this opportunity to go out and prove themselves never really took that opportunity. And it goes a long way to saying that, you know, the man of the match yesterday was actually a guy who was only on the pitch for half an hour. It was Diego Jota. So, you know, it's one of those ones you've got to look at it and think there was an opportunity there for players, but not many of them really impressed that started that game for me.
Ange was a bit scathing's maybe a strong word. I suppose Celtic just haven't had any negative results or performances really to speak of in a long time, Jonathan. Maybe what we've seen the difference in Ange's persona was the fact that he was maybe the one making more excuses than the likes of a cynical contributor like myself was at the start of the season, because he had such a bigger picture to deal with, and he was going, right, mate, it's easy for you just to sit and expect wins. I've got all this shit to deal with. Whereas now he maybe feels he's got everything now in line, so it's a poor performance now. Ange might be feeling like I can now be critical of it when it doesn't go my way. You know, and that's maybe we've seen a bit of that. I also think a lot of it, Jonathan, was psychological. I think he was definitely trying to keep people on their toes. I think it was a reminder he was trying to give people, you know, to get in this team, you don't get in there for freebies. You know, no one gets in on a free pass. You know, I mean, you do get an opportunity. I expect you to take it with both hands, not just sort of fit in. You know, don't hide behind a large win, you know, whether it be 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. Don't hide behind the scoreline. What did you contribute? What did I see from you on the pitch? I think he was a wee shot over the bow with that on that. Just think this is Ange's way of trying to remind people, Jonathan, how far the standards have risen.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely going to say, I think the key word is standards when it comes to Ange, and I think for him yesterday, a lot of the players just didn't get to the standards that he's expecting of them now at this stage of the season, given how good the performances have been, particularly over the last few weeks since the winter break. And the players just, as I say, they just seem slow and a bit lethargic, which I think there was always possibility a performance like that was going to come along eventually. They're only human at the end of the day. These sort of games are going to happen. But I think Ange makes some great points about just saying that the standards weren't there. And he makes a great comment even after the game where he gets asked about have the team exceeded all of his expectations throughout the season. He actually turns around and says they're actually nowhere near my expectations. So you can tell there is a bit of digging. I mean, I think from his point of view, I think it's just because he believes in the potential of the squad and he thinks there's so much more to come from this Celtic team, rather than really trying to have like a proper dig at them for not playing well. I think it was almost more frustration at the fact that he knows how good these players are and that they didn't quite hit the sort of heights that he expects of them now and what they're capable of doing. I think as well, you've got a big European game coming up on Thursday, so it was another opportunity for players to make a statement and try and work their way into that starting 11. And unfortunately, I don't really feel most of the players that actually came in did a particularly good job of impressing Ange to get into that team on Thursday. I think Liam Scales did quite decent, but aside from him, I would have said there wasn't many that started the game that you would think that don't normally start that would actually start on Thursday night. But it'll be very interesting to see how the players respond to the sort of criticism they've had from Ange, because he's not actually given out that much criticism at all of late.
Very little.
Yeah, very little. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think he's done it in such a diplomatic way that he can actually, get away with it. And he's got enough good grace in the back with the squad as well. And there's a brilliant point for me on that. It's pretty much exactly commenting on what he was saying in the first half, and probably what all the thousands at Celtic Park were saying as well, that had made the trip in the pissing down rain to go and watch it.
Well, Jonathan, the thing is in football, right? Everyone's on a slight, whether it be the players or management, in this day and age, everyone really is on a bit of a self-preservation path, right? They need to look after and protect their brand, their view from us as fans. Whether they don't want their standing remotely dropping, whether it be a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, he doesn't want his stock to drop at any time. He doesn't want sponsors. A lot of it's self-preservation, and for managers as well, a lot of it is whether Ange was getting it right or wrong at the start of the season is so irrelevant, where he had this alibi, which again I actually do tend to believe, that he was up against it. The whole turnaround that Ange had to deal with at the start was so humongous that even when there was a negative result, he could kind of use that as his buffer. Celtic have started 2022 in such a manner that when they play shit against a team that hadn't won in 2 months from lower leagues, Raith Rovers, I think he knew today there was no hiding place for that. And so he didn't do a Gerrard and turn on the players horribly, but it was the first time he went, no, I ain't taking the flak for this shit. If you want to play like that against Raith, you all know the methods by now. I'm happy with the squad I've got. I'm happy now with the options I've got. When I take players out, and we've spoken about this, Jonathan, on this podcast so many times, when he takes players out and he puts players in, he expects the same level of job to be done. Quite clearly, that didn't happen against opposition that he thought it should have. And I thought it was the first warning shot from Ange. I'm no longer willing to carry the can for whatever happens negative in the second half of this season. The responsibility is now back over to you guys, because it's quite obvious what I'm wanting to do on the pitch. I've had to take hits. I've had to have that twat Boyce'S criticise him at the start. I've had to have newspapers slagging me off at the start. I've had Hugh Keevan saying it's a disaster, etc. at the start. But now we've all seen the fruits of his labour. So when it's not happening, I thought it was the first time we seen him turn around at the players and go, well, I've protected you. Raith Rovers at home, no excuse. I kind of get his thought process behind that, Jonathan. And again, I don't think it was in a way it was a tin pot way of removing all responsibility. I just think it was the first signs of Ange going, I need you now to act like men here. I kind of like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's just a case of how much the team has grown and how much he expects of his players now. And, as I keep going back to, the players had an ample opportunity. He did make a few changes, which does disrupt the rhythm of a team. And I think he says as much in his post-match interview that there is an element of that as to why the performance wasn't as fluid, as some of the other ones have been of late. But it's such a good opportunity for some of the players, that came in. Your likes of Mikey Johnson's and, even James Forrest, who we've touched upon quite a bit of late. And, neither of them really got involved in the game that you'd expect them to, because both of those players should be able to put in a performance at home to Raith Rovers, big wide pitch at Celtic Park, and they should be having no issues taking care of business there. But neither of them really looked completely at it for me whatsoever. And, I think you're right. I think Ange does have to sometimes turn around and be reminding the players that this isn't a cakewalk, and I think there was a little bit of complacency almost coming in to the players because of the great results, obviously, over the particular last week or two. That perhaps they did need a bit of a grounding down to earth and being told, you know what, you can't just perform like that. You perform like that against Raith, you might get away with it. Perform like that on Thursday night, maybe not so much.
Well, that's it, Jonathan. I think it's all about driving standards as well. And I think as well, for Ange to show that side of his character, and you know I love the psychology of all this, Jonathan. This is my thing in sport, fundamentally. I love how to get into their mindset. And I think Ange is the first time he's went, I can get away with having a pop at them because it was such a free hit, that game against Raith Rovers as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's on the back of such a successful Raith. He's waited till they've got top of the league before at any point he's shown any sort of, do you know what? I expect a bit more from you. Now, we were 3 wins from 6 at the start of the season. We were behind in a title race all until only 10 days ago. Suddenly now, Postecoglou's doing it, guess what? From a position of strength.
Yes.
Very clever. And more reasons to rate Postecoglou than not. Now, we look at recent examples, Jonathan, of teams being thrown under, for want of a better word, bus. And you think of...
No, this bus tonight is going so slowly, how long it takes to start. There's no way anyone's getting thrown under
this. Hey, trust me, they've got run over by this bus, honestly. But Gerrard, rookie manager as he was called at the time, maybe it was a bit naive when you look back at it. He would have the same sort of criticism of his team when they fucked up. Ange protected the Celtic squad when they got negative results, and he's actually kind of picked on them, not badly, by the way. I'm not going to make a huge meal of this, but when he has decided to have a wee constructive pop, shall we say, at the team, a reminder, shall we say, of the standards expected, he's chosen to do it from a position of strength. I think that encourages me even more. This is the right guy for what is effectively an extremely young Celtic squad as well, John. I think we forget that. I mean, we look at great Celtic teams over the years. I mean, I say great in our lifetime. The Martin O'Neill team is a great team. But in our generation, there's O'Neill's team. You look at the Strachan squad, for example, right? Both did extremely well in Europe in 2 different competitions and for different reasons. But they had a hell of a lot more experience in their ranks than what Postecoglou's left with. And remember, a lot of the experience that was in the Celtic squad before was either sold on or allowed to leave. The rippling effects of that we may well discuss tonight. But I think what he's doing is he's got a young squad almost on, like, very much like the fan base, Jonathan. I think the squad is hanging on his every word right now, the same way the fan base are. And I think he knows exactly when to back them to the tilt and then pick and choose his moments when to give them timely reminders of the standards he's still demanding and expecting. And as you say, everyone's eyebrows raised when he says they're nowhere near where they should be yet. Nowhere near it. That's almost more shocking than Atati not being fit.
I know. He's definitely got his way with the words. I think, particularly now, because I think of how much he's grown, since he's came into the role, Postecoglou, in terms of how much people are now perceiving him and beginning to realise just how good a manager he is. I think if he tried this, at the start of the season when results weren't going well, he probably hadn't quite got everyone on side by then. The fans wouldn't have bought into it as much. People would have been a lot more dismissive of it and thought this is just a manager that's been given an opportunity here and he's not taking it, and now he's throwing the players under the bus, for want of a better expression. And the players probably wouldn't have bought into it quite as much either because they wouldn't have been as familiar with working with him. But because he's had now these 6 months where he's just really taken this club to levels we probably didn't really expect, if we're being completely honest, at the start of the season. I don't think anyone thought after the shambles of a summer we'd be sitting in February having won the League Cup and having a 1-point lead in the league and still being in the Scottish Cup and potentially still on for a treble, believe it or not. I think anyone in the right mind...
Quadruple.
What's that?
Quadruple.
Well, the quadruple, yes. If you look at the European competition again, and there's a possibility there they could go on to do some big things in that competition, which I'm sure we'll touch on later. But, it's just something you'd have bitten your hand off as a Celtic fan, back in August, when you consider the absolute shambles he inherited to what he's done now. I think no Celtic fan would have any problem if he wants to turn around now and have a bit of criticism of the players. And I think the players have bought into what he's saying as well, as you rightly say. They've bought into his philosophies, his way of playing, and he's earned their respect over these last 6 months, that if he turns around and says that's not good enough, they're going to take heed of that. And I think you will see a reaction come Thursday night, because for large parts of the game, it wasn't really what we expected to see from Celtic.
No, I think that's fair. Now, everything we spoke about there, is a lot of it is the psychological warfare that goes on, I suppose, between manager and pampered professionals in football these days. Ange, for me, is playing it perfectly. I had concerns with Jonathan about his squad, or his first team, I should say, selection yesterday. For me, there was a glaring miss that we discussed in the previous week, and I thought it was an open goal to play Jullien from the start. I had good ding-dong on Twitter with a few people, a lot of varying views, and I kind of took that on the chin. I thought, well, I've never really seen it for that angle. Fair enough, I get it. But to me, the standard of opposition yesterday, 29-year-old, £7 million player, if you are going to get him up to speed for the second half of a crucial season, every season's crucial. I suppose every period of a season is crucial. I need you fit, mate. The only opportunity we're going to get between now and the end of the season, there've been none as good as what yesterday was, to give Jullien an opportunity. I'm sorry, there just wasn't. He doesn't start, but he does come on. And it was a wonderful moment. I know the crowd wasn't, all that, but that's to be expected. It's Raith Rovers at home. The hard-earned cash is spent by Celtic fans left, right and centre. Anyone gloating at that's a fucking idiot. We didn't stand by and let us get beat off Raith Rovers or anything like that, And I just thought Jullien's return, when I watched him coming back on, I think anyone who thinks that this is over with him and Celtic, I don't think's been paying attention. I think the guy he's got to convince the most is, for me, isn't any section of the fan base, is Postecoglou himself, who for whatever reason, I've got a funny wee thing in my head, and I don't know what it is. I've got a feeling Ange doesn't fancy Jullien. For me, seeing him coming back on, I felt a boost, Jonathan, because I think he's top draw.
Yeah, I think with Jullien, it's an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure. I know he's needed minutes, and I get what you're saying. With Raith Rovers at home, he's not going to get a better opportunity to get those. Considering between now and the end of the season, it's going to be crucial games every single time that we walk out onto the pitch. It's going to be a massive match for us. I thought even when he came on, I did think he was still quite a bit off the pace, to be honest, from what I caught of it, Jullien. And maybe there was that playing in the back of Postecoglou's mind, is that he didn't feel he'd get a lot of time out of him, and he's trying to ease him back in gently. Jullien's obviously had less time to train with the squad, with Postecoglou's methods compared to the other centre-halves, because he only came back in and started full training, I think, in January. So he's not had quite as long a time at it as some of the other ones. But, for me, when it comes to Chris Jullien, I think there's definitely a great player there. And I think when it comes to actually performing, then Jullien will work his way back into contention. There's no doubt about it. For me, he's too good a player not to. And I think I think he's just one of these guys who takes a bit of time with his fitness. I remember when we first signed him, Russell, Jullien took a while to get up to speed, even when Lennon brought him in to begin with. If you remember, I think he got left out of a few squads. Got put
Cluj! Fucking the Cluj game that we went out in Europe.
That's right, because he wasn't up to speed, is what the official line was from the club anyway.
You're Lennon telling anyone someone's not up to speed is a slap in the face, right?
But yeah, maybe there was foundation in that, because he did. I remember he vaguely played against Dunfermline in the League Cup that season. His first game, he was pretty appalling there, to be perfectly honest. So he is somebody I think that maybe just needs to be managed in terms of his fitness, and I'm sure Postecoglou will be able to manage that far better than the likes of a Neil Lennon, for example. But I think it is just a case of wrapping him in cotton wool. I think he's quite comfortable at centre-halves as well at the moment. Starfelt and Carter Vickers have been pretty solid. So he probably doesn't feel he needs to rush them. But I guess the flip of that is if something happens to one of them, where do you go?
Well, if something happens to them, you're playing on not up to speed, Chris Jullien. Do you know what
Or
I mean?
Stephen Welsh, it's one or the other.
Yeah, which is fair enough when he starts. But say something does bad happen to me. For me, you should always have 4 centre backs ready to go out to 2 positions. You know, it's same as any position. You always have 2 options. We always talk about it. If you've got a left back, you have 2 left backs. Well, there's 2 centre backs. You need 4. It's common sense, right? Chris Jullien never got a better opportunity to be up to speed. Adam Apple comes in. Jullien, top drawer. WTF. I mean, firstly, Adam, argument I've ever read in my life. However, I will read it out because I like to get as many opinions on the bus as possible. I'm basing the Chris Jullien top drawer on obviously the level he's playing at in terms of SPFL, 100% he's top drawer. £7 million. What is your second most expensive signing of all time? I would say that's Celtic's top drawer. And also, I'm good pals with a guy called Robin Berner. He's a Goal.com journalist who specialises in French football. I had a long chat with Robin as we were signing Chris Jullien and got the lowdown on him, and he seemed to think it was an absolute steal Celtic were getting Chris Jullien to join Celtic, and the fact he was only £7 million, Robin reminded me, is because he was in the final 12 months of his contract. So I bet you didn't know that either. However, Adam Apple, I always like a wee bit of debate, but WTF ain't going to cut it on the bus, big man. A wee bit more. Do better. You can do better than that because I'm giving you context to my vibe, mate, on it. I just want
I think as well when it comes to Jullien, too, I think people may have forgotten in his first season, he was actually scoring hugely important goals as well. He wasn't just defending well. You know, he got a winner against Lazio, and he also got the winning goal in the League Cup final that season. So, you know, he's a threat and a menace from corners, which Celtic badly need, by the way, because we don't score enough corners. Apparently, we did score one Sunday there. But generally speaking, we don't have enough presence from corner kicks. Jullien's a big, tall boy that just gets on the end of things far better than anything else we've got at centre-half.
We talk about set pieces consistently on this show, and we are the bus of positivity. We are the podcast of positivity. Celtic are unbeaten since the Boyce'S bus picked up and started rolling into everyone's lives from the 6th of December, Jonathan. However, there's this myth that goes about, like Punk Rocker 6431, and no offence, Punk Rocker, I'm delighted that you're on the bus, by the way, and, you know, I look forward to more debate with everyone who comes in the comments. They gets bullied by anyone over 12 stone. What's that based on? I'll tell you what I think that's based on, Jonathan. Lyndon Dykes, plastic pitch, Livingston. Tell me any other example.
Yeah.
Tell me any. This is a guy coming in from Liga, top drawer player, who's the flight of the ball, the way it bounces off that turf, etc. And don't get me wrong, the amount of leeway you get in the SPFL compared to one of the top 5 leagues in Europe in terms of a physical battle. But this myth that anyone over 12 stone bullies Jullien, he's made of chocolate. Watch what's put him out for 40 months. That's a guy that desperate to keep a clean sheet because he knew Barkas was incapable of it. Slid into the post. You know, I just think most times when players are out, they get looked at more fondly, Jonathan. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. With Jullien, absence seems to make the heart grow colder. And I don't get it. I just don't get it. Anyway, I look forward to seeing the impact Jullien has. And if my hunch is right, Jonathan, that Ange doesn't particularly fancy him, I hope Jullien proves him wrong. And any doubters right now. But bullied over by anyone over 12 stone. I mean, come on. No offence, but we've got to have a wee bit more real terms than that. I mean, you don't make it to the stage he is. You don't get the move to Celtic for £7 million 2 years ago. France under 21s. Did he win the World Cup with France under 19s or something? Something like that. But yeah, it's because anyone over 12 stone bullies him. Come on.
There's no doubt about it, Russell. If he finds the sort of form he had when he first signed for Celtic in his first season with us, absolutely no danger. He ends up playing centre-half with Carter Vickers every day of the week and twice on a Sunday. There's just no debating that for me.
I think you're spot on, Jonathan. I think you're absolutely spot on. Now, Ange's interview, Jonathan, it was Stan Sport, wasn't it? It's almost too good to be true. Now, if we didn't know better, you'd not believe that his take on Celtic as social justice wasn't scripted. Jonathan, at the rate Ange is going, are we going to see an Ange Postecoglou autobiography released by Celtic for Christmas 2022? A la Brendan Rodgers? Because this guy answers questions better than Rodgers could even dream of. And you know what? For a guy that fine well didn't grow up a Celtic fan, he's convinced me that he already is now. I thought it was superb when you seen the takeaways from that interview with the Australian Stan Sport today.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you. One thing's for sure, I don't think Postecoglou's going to give you the spiel about Danny McGrain and all this. Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Danny. Oh, the pleasure's all mine. I don't think Postecoglou's the type who will come out and try and just feed off the fans in that way. But certainly the interview was most welcome, I have to say. It almost is too good to be true, as you touched upon. Particularly when he's talking about how the values of the club pretty much marry up completely with his own. I think they talk a little bit about social justice and about how Ange Postecoglou's done his research, knows the history of the club, knows the foundations of the club. And for him, you could tell it struck a chord with him. And similar to his own sort of lifestyle of being an immigrant as well, that he felt very much obliged with the club and kind of almost had that sort of affinity with the club from day one. You can see even if the way he tries to get his teams to play, he talks a good bit about his playing style. It's a terrific interview if you've not watched it yet. And he goes on in quite a lot of depth into how he actually wants to set his teams up. There's no plan Bs with him. I think he is going to be quite similar to Rodgers in that sense. It's going to be total football, regardless of who the opponent is. But you can tell he's just somebody who just lives and breathes football completely, and he just is so refreshing to have as a manager. And I think at the start of the season, Celtic fans would have looked at it and thought, Ange, who's this guy we've actually got in? And now you're actually going to realise it's actually a privilege to have him as the manager of our football club, I would say.
For all the investment we've all made in Ange in the last 5-6 months, Jonathan, it's undeniable it's been a two-way street the whole time. Ange has been privately, whether he's willingly done it or not, been emotionally investing in the club he is now manager of. He couldn't wait to tell the Australian journalist, Jonathan, that it was to help Irish immigrants the club was formed, and these values are still held to this very day. I think he was actually kind of enjoying the fact, I've got some trivia about this, I now know the story with this. We've got Paul McDonald watching Down Under in Australia. Watched Jullien in the weekend. I have to say, he looked like a deer in the headlights and does have energy as an Ange, but I reserve my judgment. Look, Carl Starfelt's done a very good job under Ange, right? No two ways about it. We don't criticise Jonathan. But if Starfelt can make it in Ange's team, trust me, Paul, Chris Jullien, we have a body of evidence for the last 2 years that he's been here. He will be able to cut the mustard. Don't you worry about that. And
I don't think it'll be a problem with Jullien there at all. I think it's just a case. It's going to take a bit of time to get him up to speed. So I'd certainly cut him some slack and give him those minutes. And then, come the end of the season, we'll have a much better idea of where Chris Jullien is and whether or not he's going to feature heavily for Ange or not. But my gut feeling is Chris Jullien is going to have a part to play in this Celtic team going forward.
No, agreed, Jonathan, agreed. Now, I appreciate we came on so late, and I know I was only being a wee bit flippant at the beginning. I do apologise for the lateness, I really do. But there is now 128 watching, Jonathan, just so you know.
Wow.
So it's another busy Monday Club, mate. Because it's Boyce'S Monday Club. And that is what we do on the Boyce bars. The Monday Club, that term was coined by me. It'll be kept with me. I suppose a wee bit much like, it's now, fat night got into it. But there's some sort of Screamadelica thing that goes on another show that's got a first name beside it now, which makes me laugh a lot. Now, Jonathan, everything in the Scottish football sphere is a competitive environment. Now, I got pulled up by one of my favourite people to bicker with on Twitter because it's friendly banter. Gio Van Souness, or whatever he's called. And I think he's called Stevie Souness. I mean, I like him, but he's a poor man's damn Celtic son, and he won't mind me saying that. But we always have good banter, right? And in fairness, he's actually backed me up to the tilt when Rangers fans have maybe went, studs up on me about appearances and stuff. And he's went, whoa, stick to football, yada, yada, which is fine. But I reminded him today when he tried to pull me up for mentioning what happened a decade ago to the day. I said, don't you you can't kid me on, mate. Imagine if this was Celtic 10 years ago. You tell me you wouldn't be tweeting daft about it today. Right, let's get somewhere here. So, I'm intrigued as to what everyone's feelings are on it now. And I don't want to discuss, Jonathan, have they died? Have they resurrected? I'm not meaning any of that. But what's the rippling effect been of what happened 10 years ago, Jonathan, in a competitive state for Scottish football, in terms of what have Celtic done with the 10 years that have transpired since? Have we done enough? Should we be further out of sight? I also find it fascinating the surprise people have when they look at the accounts. And I had a great chat about this at the weekend, Celtic's books with Mark Spowett. And I know it can sound a bit boring on paper, but I think the genuine surprise is that Celtic have got their whole house in order. And a lot of that's to do because they've had a decade of being able to give guys like Chris Ayer loan spells at Kilmarnock before integrating the squad. 600 grand turns into 13 million pounds just like that, What have all the implications been of what happened 10 years ago? And how much of the effects are we still feeling? Whether in a positive light, if you've got any negative slant on it, fire away as well. And if you want to take the odd joke, Jonathan, do you know what? It's rivalry. It's patter. If Celtic went to administration 10 years ago, there'd be plenty of folk from the other side, whether they want to. Nobody's died in our family about it. You know what I mean? It's a laugh. Get over it. It's funny.
Yeah, well, as I say, I'm sure there'll be plenty of fun and games being had and have been had all day. It's a day that a lot of people are going to remember 10 years on from the event. I think, when you're looking back on it now, obviously Celtic pretty much went into a position in the table where they were pretty much going to dominate. Having said that, there was actually a couple of seasons in there where Aberdeen did push them a wee bit. I think Celtic took their foot off the gas ever so slightly when Rangers' financial troubles really hit. I think there was a spell where Rangers, the Newco or whatever you want to call them, they were in the lower leagues, and Celtic, they plodded along. They won the league championships. They did a few good things over that period. They were able to, as you say, start building the financial bank because they didn't need to spend as much on players to secure domestic success in terms of the league. I think Celtic really probably actually got more serious, ironically, when Rangers come back into the top flight. Is the most ironic thing about it. I think in some ways Celtic were getting a bit complacent because they were having
ways.
Yeah, because
in some ways, wow, more than that.
I was trying to be a bit more diplomatic rather than rather than being too harsh on anyone tonight, because we're all a bit positivity on the bus, so I didn't want to be too negative.
We are. You're right. No, I'll take that on the chin. You're right.
Yeah, so I was kind of being like, I thought, over those years there was more of an opportunity to really build on that success, and I think the fact of the matter was, I vaguely remember those years, the first couple after 2012, and it was all about winning the treble. That was kind of what the big thing was. It was like, how many are we going to take? Whilst we don't really have strong competition. And the ironic thing was we didn't win any until Rangers came back actually into the top flight, and I think they did push us on a little bit there, and there was obviously the incentive because they had knocked us out of the cup the year before. We did have that kind of going for us in terms of where it's allowed us to grow.
Jonathan, let's look at that. Let's look at that then, because whatever way people want to look at it, demoted through the leagues. Well, we all know there was two different Rangers. Anyway, I don't really get off on slagging them all for that, right? But one thing I will take issue with is anything Celtic have achieved in the last decade being demeaned by all the fault of whatever entity it was you want to talk about there. And whenever it came to a crushing end 10 years ago, and none of this is on Celtic, apart from Celtic being good. And the opposition trying to keep up with through means that they couldn't afford. So that side of it really does cheese me off, that anything's demeaned in that we've succeeded with since then. Come on. Now, I think the first example you give there, Jonathan, 2016. 2016, that to me was the reminder to the Celtic board about the complacency you may have just spoke of there. you realise you had an under par. I know Dyler's done well in America and stuff yet, right? But he was not equipped to be the Celtic boss at that time. And he knew it, hence why he resigned. And that was the first sign I think we've seen, Jonathan, of shit, we've got complacent. And Celtic at that point, and this is what I think the past 10 years has taught us about Celtic. Celtic have been very reactionary, Jonathan, to situations, not proactive. That goes way beyond just them, their new existence, whatever you want to call it, right? Way beyond that. But it all starts from that period, you know. I've always said this, that people could take this as kudos to the other side, or they could take it as, you know, whatever they want. I don't really care. See, if it had been Celtic that were in the 3rd division of Scottish football, 4th division of Scottish football, they wouldn't have given 2 hoots, Jonathan, right?
No.
If they had that advantage, they wouldn't be looking in the rearview mirror at where we were.
No,
I think Celtic spent a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. And then, ironically, once they got close, they got Brendan Rodgers in. But then Celtic got complacent even with that dominance, Jonathan, and thought Neil Lennon will be able to do the same. Whilst, as Rangers fans like to remind us, we were going for the most important title 10 in a row. I'm always quick to remind people the most important title is the next one. Full stop, right? Forget all that shit. And by the way, you know, one trophy in the last decade out of all of them doesn't come close to equating to what we've achieved. You know, nobody's crying about what's happened. It was a special time, and it will be looked at very favourably. But we could have had someone more equipped to manage Celtic than Neil Lennon for those 10 years. And I think that was a complacency issue that Celtic have had. And a lot of it, though, as well, is based on the fact we think they're rooked. We read tin pot blogs. Some of them might have had credibility at some point in the last 15 years. I dare say a lot of them are pissing in the wind with a lot of their views, Jonathan, now, to be honest. I think they're guesswork. But they know they get hits if they say they're going bust, because it was such a big thing the first time round. But when Celtic focus on being the biggest club in Scotland, Celtic will be. Celtic will dominate. It's when Celtic take one eye off the ball and put one eye on what's going on over there that I actually think Celtic become more like lower their own standards as opposed to actually improving them. When we just focus on us, that's when we'll go to the next level. And I think often we have been too fascinated by the financial shit show that they were in. The fact, you know, their lack of the biggest wake-up call we could ever have had only happened, 7 months ago when they lifted that SPFL trophy. Now it's time to reassert our dominance. The books on Friday, Jonathan, confuses your rivals. They don't understand because it's costed 86 million losses to win that first trophy, right? And I'm not saying that to point and laugh, by the way. It's just facts are facts, right? And they might not owe it. Maybe the directors will write all that off, but it's not a sustainable business model, right?
No.
Celtic have been allowed in the last 10 years an opportunity to build this model that is going to be sustainable and going to see us through the odd year we do shit. And there will be dotted throughout the next 30 years, I think, years where Rangers dominate, but very few and far between, Jonathan. I think if you look at the last 20 years and you see it in like a calendar view and you look at how many years Rangers have actually won trophies, I think you could forecast the next 20 being very, very similar. But the way we'll keep that up is if we keep on focusing on what we can do and not what we think or may have thought they can.
Yeah,
I'm on a roll, by the way.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what Ange was saying the other week there about you can only focus on yourself, and it's something that the whole club needs to take on board and make sure that is what they are doing. There's only so much you can control. You can't control what goes on across the city, whether they are spending money they don't have or not. It's irrelevant really in the grand scheme of things. It's all about making sure Celtic do what Celtic do best, and that is, win games of football and making sure that they stay on top. Celtic have that financial advantage over Rangers purely because they've got the bigger stadium anyway. That gives them an advantage there. They've also had, as we've touched upon, these last 10 years where they have been able to put money in the bank, and Rangers are having to spend to rebuild, and obviously who knows what's going to happen with the debts they've accrued there possibly as well. But it's not really about that from a Celtic point of view. You know, Rangers could end up having an Arab coming in and bankrolling them. But for Celtic, all they can really do is just continue to focus on what their job is, and that's to try and win trophies. You know, they win the league this year, you're going straight into the Champions League. You're talking an absolute windfall there, on top of how great our bank balance is looking at the moment. And you know, it's all there to play for Celtic. I guess the concern, if you were to look at patterns, is, you know, when Celtic have had success previously, I don't always feel they've capitalised on it as much as they could have as a club and really built on previous successes. And you've always got that nagging doubt that even if they were to win the league this year, get the Champions League money, have all that extra money in the bank, would they actually then decide to kick on, or would they decide again to once again look over their shoulder and think, oh, we're quite far in front here, we can take our foot off the gas?
Well, Jonathan, this is the beauty. I mean, me and Mark on Friday, Mark Spowett, brilliant guest. We had a brilliant chat about what the books proved to us, Jonathan, the end of year accounts was, if the worst comes to the worst, right, and we finish second this year. I don't think we will, by the way. If you genuinely ask me now who my money would be on to win this league, forget the green tinted specs. I genuinely think Celtic would be my preferred option. If you give me £100 to, you know, bet for a charity at the bookies, I would back Celtic to win the league, right? Say they don't. I look at those accounts, those numbers, and go, do you know what? It doesn't mean as much to us if we don't win the league this year. But what it does if we do takes us into a cash surplus in the accounts that has never been seen before. Now, the turnover, etc., under Rodgers, as I keep going on about in this show, over 100 million in 2 years. This year's it's only 52 million. Half nearly, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just frightening. But the actual live cash in the bank is huge. 25.7 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Right now. Now, we know there'll be losses from the January expenditure and the players we brought in, but every one of those now an asset on the pitch already. You know, they're already worth X amount. I think there's a lot to be excited about, and I believe Celtic are in that position later than what they should have been, if I'm completely honest. Later than what they should have been, and relied too much on the drive coming from Rangers reappearing in the league as opposed to leaving them in the dust. Whether that was to build the brand, etc., I don't know. Maybe that's how naive the board were, Jonathan. Maybe they were that tunnel vision. They thought one needs the other and it'll be better for broadcasters, etc. Well, I would look at the broadcasting treatment the league gets right now and say, whoa. Did you not prefer being on the Champions League shows? You know, when Jeff Stelling was hosting and Celtic beating Barcelona, for example, and that was the number one match on the same said broadcaster right now that can't even put you live against Aberdeen at Pittodrie. Interesting. Anyway, I just think there's been so many after effects of what happened. And yes, it's funny to gloat and take the piss out and that. And of course, that would happen the other way around, right? So I'm not going to apologise for that. But what I will say is, I would expect clubs to have more of a fiscal responsibility, shall we say, since. I'm not quite entirely convinced that is what's happening over there. But what I don't want is us, as I've given the examples to you, Jonathan, is us to overconsume ourselves with that either. If they're getting away with whatever their expenditure is right now, just let them. Let it go on. But make sure we're doing our bit. And our responsibility right now is to win the league. That's simple. Be the biggest club in the country. And I think the last 10 years we have been. I think the last 20 years we have been. I think the next 10 years we should reaffirm that, regardless of whether someone wants to pull them up for misspending, breaking financial fair play laws, etc. It's out with our control. Listen to our manager. He does not focus on things that are out with his control.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those ones we just have to, you know, keep doing what we're doing, focus on ourselves, you know, and if you are to have, you know, more years of success, inevitably, if it turns out the other half of the city is overspending, it'll catch up with them as it did in 2012 eventually. But we've got to do our bit and make sure we're winning trophies, and then it doesn't really matter too much to us what's going on across the city. I'd have to agree with you if the bloggers were right all the time. Now, Rangers were on a bus about 50 times over the last 10 years. I would have said. So I don't really see the point in focusing too much on their financial position. I think from our point of view, we're in a very much a position of strength. So there's no need for us to be getting overly concerned about it. Our bank balance is extremely healthy. There's money there, regardless of whether we win the league this season or not. As you rightly say, that we can still go again in the transfer window in the summer. We've still got good assets in terms of players that we could sell if we had to increase our revenues still. And of course, you've got this season as well, where you've now got this additional European Conference League, which is going to bring in more income that, in other seasons wouldn't have been available to Celtic, which will only boost the accounts for the second half of the season too.
Yep, absolutely. I get where you're coming from with that. I mean, I'm not going to sit and champion being in the third tier of European football. Again, that shows you the standards were allowed to drop during that time. But I wonder, Jonathan, just touching on what you were saying there, that it created a new sort of media for supporters, right? Blogs became the in thing 10 years ago, maybe slightly over 10 years, but because it's the 10-year anniversary of whatever happened with them, right? It led up to that, maybe the 18 months prior on, that Phil Guy's blog or whatever, and blogs were kind of the thing. Now, obviously, particularly the last 3 years, it's became this sort of thing, podcast, whether that be audios mainly, now YouTube ones, and there was almost an unhealthy obsession, Jonathan, that started for the blogs, keeping an eye on your opposition for their finances, what Mike Ashley's doing and stuff like that. When really, when you cut through the bullshit, isn't my bag, it's not your bag. I was much more interested when I watched Moussa Dembele putting a hat-trick by them. I don't remember ever thinking during that time, how are they affording Joey Barton in the midfield? I didn't care. He was there, and we were beating them. And I think because there's so many different eyes now and so many different platforms that views can be aired, whether that be written or audio or visual, whatever, like you hear all these different angles that almost over-consume you from the sporting context, which is really what football fans should be all about. Whether we like it or not, the reason you love Celtic is the first time you watched them on that grassy pitch. Not what anyone was doing in a boardroom, no spreadsheet, just what happened on the pitch. And, gloating over another team's accounts and stuff, and you're probably not qualified to, ends up a wee bit cheap at times. But what it made me realise, Jonathan, was, I had a wee nibble on Twitter, and I think it's friendly banter. I really do. I think it's fair game. As I say, if we'd been in admin...
If it'd been the other way around, it'd been exactly the same stuff would have been happening, let's be honest. So
I'd be tagged in all sorts, right? So anyone crying about that can ram it. But what it did remind me was, as I was saying about the podcast, it became such a big deal just now. It is all pantomime to me. So, obviously, folk are desperate at times to ask you on Twitter, particularly teams who support the other ball, what happened to you and the other guy, from the other pod. And it's at times I'm like, I don't know if they're stirring the pot or maybe they're just seeing it at face value. It's a bit of banter. I mean, I tried to sum up in one tweet today, Jonathan, just by saying it was 3 minutes of catty messages on WhatsApp. That's pretty much it. That was it. I know you're looking for more juice than that, but that was pretty much it. Who cares, There's a lot of good work being done as well, though. And I messaged Ryan 118 the other night, and I don't want to blow smoke up folks' asses, you know what I mean? But I watched his show, The Celtic, The Thunder, last night. Was it last night? Saturday night, when I was cooking my tea. He was outstanding. And there was something real about it. And I thought, do you know what? All these sort of things this podcast, and they've all came a long way. We just enjoy being part of the ride. We're certainly not here, Jonathan, to be... I know everyone wants me to say, hey, this bus will take over. I think relatively so. I've not even got Wi-Fi that works, But has the event, the administration event, liquidation event over there, that seemed to be the catalyst for blogs popping up left, right and centre. Has the focus now turning back to being Celtic fan media focused on Celtic? I think that's a far healthier thing than the blogs that initially started that were Celtic fan media focused on Rangers finances. I think the way around that we've got it now is far healthier, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd have to agree with you there. I think it is far better to be focusing on your own club and looking at the positives that are going on inside the walls of Celtic Park rather than looking elsewhere to poke fun. And as I say, I think for a lot of people, they'll look at the events of 2012, and if they believe that, that Rangers are no longer the same club, then they wouldn't really be interested in their finances as much anyway. I just think when it comes to sort of healthy sort of debate and everything else, you're wanting to look at your own football club. You want to make sure your own football club's doing well first and foremost. I think it was fun to poke fun at their accounts for a while, when they were struggling, but it's not really that relevant anymore because Rangers are now competing for titles with us again, and it's not a laughing matter.
They're the champions, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, that is another fair point.
I hate saying that. I hate saying it, but it's true.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those ones where you've now got to really focus all your attention on your own club and see what they can do better and everything else. Because what happens across the city is totally irrelevant and out with our control in a lot of ways. So you've got to be looking at your own club. Of course you do. You've got to be thinking, how can we do better? What's going on with our own team? Is there areas we can improve on? How's the manager doing with things? There's so many different viewpoints and everything else we can take. And I think fans are getting a lot more enthused and are just wanting to have those conversations now rather than actually, looking across the city and thinking, oh, well, they've spent X, Y, or Z. Their accounts are looking shite. Who gives a monkeys, really, at the end of the day? It's all about what Celtic do. Give me a Celtic League title win and Rangers can have their accounts looking as pristine as they want as far as I'm concerned.
I think you've just nailed it. I think you've absolutely nailed it, Jonathan. You think of the satisfaction you got when Lee Alabada puts that third goal past them, the other Wednesday, and you compare that with the supposed buzz you get reading some silly blog saying, we told you all along they'd be skint. Who cares? It doesn't. I'm a football fan, and I just think after a decade of it, it's time to take stock and go, do you know what? For all this gushing about their financial demise or their impending doom, where has it got Celtic? And when have Celtic looked at the strongest? Ironically, we've been at our strongest when they were in the league, not when they were, looking down the abyss or the barrel of a gun. It's been actually when they were in the league we've looked better. The eye was taken off the ball. I think that will still happen in Celtic's future, Jonathan. I don't.
It's always going to happen. It's cycles like that happen at every football club. You only have to look down south to see perfect examples of that with teams like Manchester United, where the eye is so far off the ball down there. I'm not even sure there's a ball still in sight. But it's going to happen. Yes, you're going to have seasons where things don't go your way. But the way Celtic have built themselves up, particularly since Martin O'Neill's era, is pretty much that Celtic are now built and in a position of strength. They are in such a good place to actually go on and dominate Scottish football on the most part going forward. Of course, there's going to be some seasons where things won't go their way, but I would say if you're looking over the next 10 years, Celtic's future looks extremely bright and extremely healthy in terms of actually winning domestic titles, winning domestic cups. I would be far happier being in Celtic's position than anybody else's in Scotland.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. At the end of the day, Jonathan, the upshot of it all is first trophy on board and available to Ange is on the bus. It's already there. The league, we're leading the pack. Scottish Cup, we got through against Raith Rovers. Ange might not be happy about it, but you know what? We're through. It's another round navigated, And then we're looking at a Conference League, Jonathan, this Thursday. And we'll finish up on this one. But with a wee view to Thursday, the more I've thought about this, and I don't try and, get headlines, Jonathan, for the talking points we try and do. I try and dumb them down almost and go, let's just look at it realistically. Do you know what I mean? We don't do this for money or anything, so I don't need the headline chasing shite. I don't need to claim I'm an ITK because I'm neither. I don't have a Scooby-Doo. And one thing I'm going to say is this isn't to try and curry favour with the amount of Celtic fans. Watch 134 right now. But hit the subscribe button and the like button, by the way. I think Celtic can win the Conference League. And the more I've thought about it, the more ridiculous I've felt, almost sheepish about admitting that's my thoughts on this. Because the more I've thought about it, the more I went, wait the now. When did my standards drop so much that, yes, okay, under even Rodgers, we might have got spanked a few times in Europe. But if you'd said to me there'll be a third tier of Europe created in the next 5 years, this is during the invincible seasons, etc., Jonathan, domestically. Yeah. And you said there'll be a third tier of European format that kicks in a few years' time, and we'll be in it after Christmas. I think we might have a chance of winning that. Well, yeah, I would say I'd like to think so. Otherwise, this club's not heading in the direction I thought it was. So when I put that sensible hat on, I start thinking, do you know what? Let's have a go. Let's have a go at the Conference League. The more I think about it, I actually think as well, Celtic will value this tournament higher than maybe the supposed better teams in the competition will. And if it was to happen, it would be the most amazing thing ever, regardless of whether it's third tier of Europe or not. Everyone will forget that if you were to make, say, a final on the 25th of May.
Yeah, pretty poetic date for the final to be on, especially if it also been in Albania. I'm sure the Albanian president will be opening us all up to his country with open arms as well. I think it's certainly a tournament Celtic should be aiming to do well in. There's no two ways about it. You look at the teams in that tournament, and there's nobody there that Celtic should be looking at and fearing whatsoever. I'm actually really looking forward to the game on Thursday. If you've watched Ange's interview, obviously, that we were discussing earlier on the pod, he does go on to actually discuss Bodo Glimt in a bit of detail as well. They seem to be a very attack-minded team. They like to play football by the looks of things. Spanked Roma in their actual group. Granted, I'm sure it probably wasn't Roma's strongest team, but they still, I think, took 5 or 6 off them in Norway. So they're no mugs. I don't think we can underestimate them. It's a game we'll expect to win, of course, but I think it'll be a really entertaining game of football. I'm one that I'm actually really looking forward to on Thursday night coming up.
Jonathan, here's two arguments, right? We'll quickly get your thoughts on this and then we'll call it a night. Now, we've got Darth Listless coming in. Thank you for jumping on the bus, mate. Brilliant to have you on. And he says, any European games against solid opposition will improve us for our evolution. I subscribe to that point of view. James Young, a regular bus passenger. I've got a lot of time for James. But I disagree with him on this. League 100% priority, no distractions. Where do you sit on it, Jonathan?
Well, I would have to say I think I would be more inclined to think that the European competition offers another opportunity for the players to grow. Yeah, another opportunity for them to grow and develop. I think, when you look at it, Bodo Glimt, let's be honest, if they were in the Scottish top flight, they'd be up at the top of the table with Celtic and Rangers. They're going to be better than the rest of the league, that's for sure. So it's a great opportunity for players to actually showcase themselves against better standard of opposition. As I go back to, they were clearly no mugs in their group. They've played good football. They're the Norwegian champions, not by accident, by the way. The Norwegian league shouldn't be sniffed at just because we play in Scotland, and we don't follow the Norwegian league. They must have a good team there. I'd far rather see Celtic competing and having a go against these sort of teams than just turning their nose up and deciding, you know what, we're not going to bother. We'll only concentrate on the league. Because I think Celtic have a squad that they can do both. Why not? Why not? Why build a squad if you're not going to have a go in every competition? And
third tier of Europe. That's not what we built the squad for, Jonathan. I'd like to think, of course, we should be able to compete in the third tier of Europe and juggle that with the league. Because the squad's getting designed right now in Ange's mould to be trying to compete for Champions League group places, Jonathan, not Conference League last 16s. This should be definitely something we can juggle.
Definitely, I completely agree, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't. And as I say, this is why the team's there. We've got that opportunity now to go and make a statement in the Conference League. And I would imagine it's one that Ange Postecoglou and his squad of players are relishing the chance to do. I've seen a comment coming up asking for score predictions, so I'll put my neck on the line before we finish up. I'm going to say Celtic will win 3-1 on Thursday.
Oh, I don't like that away goal.
I think there'll be goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really simpleton sentence, though, Jonathan. I think there'll be goals in an Ange Postecoglou Celtic era.
Well, there's not many nil-nils, has there? It's a safe sentence to come out with.
I think there'll be goals, really.
Wait for the 0-0 now. I'll be back next Monday.
I'm going to have to go with Alfred. 3-0. Jonathan, I think 3-0. A dominating win. And I think the win that for any of those doubters that there still remains, and I get why there is doubters about this competition, will start turning their heads towards this competition and start looking at it in a different light after this Thursday coming. A really nice message coming in from Paul McFarlane there. As I let everyone know, Paul had lost his mum, Rose, only sort of 10 days ago, sort of thing. Really nice to see that message there.
All the best, Paul. We're all thinking of you, mate.
Absolutely. And Jonathan, we've both been there, in terms of losing a parent and stuff, and we know how difficult the funeral will be for you, Paul. But listen, the Boyce'S bus is very much with you all the way, mate. You'll never walk alone. On that note, we will leave it. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us. I'm so sorry that it's 11 o'clock at night as opposed to 10, Jonathan. If you sleep in for your work tomorrow, I'll take the hit on that.
I'll be going in with a bed head tomorrow. The quiff will be all over the place. What am I going to do?
We Tim Tim.
We Tim Tim. We won't be looking like Tim Tim tomorrow. We'll be looking more like Dennis the Menace. His hair will just be all spiked up all over the gaff.
And anyway, to everyone who's watched tonight, thanks again. I mean, there's over 128 right now on a Monday night at 11 o'clock. We can't thank you enough. It has been class fun, Jonathan, who's always catching up with you talking about Celtic. We will be back this week. Don't worry. I'm going to play some Championship Manager, I think, on Wednesday. And Thursday, we're going to do some fan cam live and some post-match pitch. Hopefully, Hugh Riley's going to be able to join us at some point for one of the shows. If not, that'll go on to next week. Jonathan, your pager's always on. So, if it starts bleeping, you've been called up.
Well, Tim's off on his great adventure back to Celtic Park on Thursday night, braving the storm to go to his first game in 2022. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So I don't think I'll be doing the podcast from outside the stadium, but you never know. Maybe I'll have a change of heart.
Remember and bring your marker pen with you, Jonathan, for all those autographs that you'll be signing, mate. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Honestly, I remember, see when we were on that, when I was on the other pod, that's how far up their own arse a lot of the contributors had even went. There was this guy who just kept doing this in the camera, Bruce or whatever his name is, Brian. And he genuinely says, I'm going to Celtic Park. I think he'd been on the pod about 4 times. And he's like, going to Celtic Park, by the way. So if any of you see me, feel free to buy me a pie or a hot dog or a drink when you see me. I'm like, wow, you definitely have the boss's state of mind. Anyway, I'll see you all later. This has been fun. Happy Valentine's Day to Bob McBob and the Red Baron. And we will see you all later on the Boyce'S bus. As I say, we're back this week. Look forward to seeing you all. Let's play some music. Adios. Cheers again, Jonathan.
See you later.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now. And you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.